Keri now for these final papers of discussion. Keri's paper is from Tumblr, Blogging Newcastle, so now we're in the 21st century. Dr Keri Glastonbury is a senior lecturer in creative writing at the University of Newcastle. She's a poet and essayist. In addition to David Murray's PhD, which you heard excerpts from this morning, she supervised other Newcastle-related RHD projects such as a fictional biography of the policy of Leo Malley and a novel about post-World War II migration to Newcastle, through to undergraduate student projects in writing The Self that capture local idiom and experience in life writing, including a zine by a local taxi driver written by an older female student. Keri.
I think this is a kind of personal essay presentation, so I'll just read it and find a bit more about me as well. Like much writing about place, this essay springs from displacement. Yet to speak of it as such feels melodramatic, especially in our current world of global mobility, whether transnational elites or refugees. I moved from Sydney to Newcastle at the end of 2006, 2 hours north on a good day down the F3, barely an act of migration. That said, however, perhaps there is something quintessential to contemporary experiences of mobility, no matter what the scale. Each increment registering ineffably on our internal GPS as it searches for ways to incorporate individual trajectories and make sense of a multi-local self over time. My relationship with Newcastle is now well into the 7-year itch. I moved here for work, my first permanent academic position in creative writing, and somehow knew that I wasn't just passing through, that getting a similar job back in Sydney could remain nigh impossible. Neither was I likely to be taking the first step toward becoming a rootless academic, using Newcastle University as a stepping stone to compete in the current global tertiary education job market. As someone who did a PhD in grunge poetics, finding myself in Newcastle could seem almost fated, in a town where the industrial is hidden in full public view, where the giant Meccano of the Brugate Island coal terminal meets the glorious Art Deco pavilion of the city ocean baths in the form of Australian chiaroscuro. The metaphor of light and dark seemed appropriate to both the poetics of both place and space in Newcastle, something palpable and inevitable in a post-colonial context. Contemporary Newcastle remains polarised, the urban decline on Hunter Street existing alongside one of the world's largest coal ports in the midst of a mining boom. Like the contested public railway line that separates Hunter Street from the Hunter River, opinions about Newcastle and its future are also divided. While debate rages and often descends into vitriol in the online comment section of the Newcastle Herald, however, I've found that the city's imaginary in non-commercial social media with user-generated content such as blogs is often more positive. On his Newcastle-focused Tumblr, The View from King Street, that's King Street, Newcastle, not King Street, Newtown, Ronnie Mullen, a blogger who lives in both Sydney and Newcastle, writes, "I'm always amazed at how down outsiders can be about the city. I have a great time in Newcastle. I eat well, live near the beach and have great friends." While Mullen's statement likely addresses the Sydney centricity of a section of his peer group, it also points to an equal and opposite fierce sense of local pride that many Newcastleians and adopted Newcastleians have for their city. To the point that an advertising campaign at Newcastle Airport seems to shoot itself in the foot by showing a photo of Merriweather Ocean Bars with the byline, "Shh, don't tell anybody." Refuting both the insularity of that kind of localism on the one hand and cosmopolitan dismissal on the other, as an insider/outsider when it comes to Newcastle, I've never been able to surrender either way. While I appreciate the city's persistent rough diamond mythology and its post-industrial ambience, if not Orica's hits about chromium leaks and the coal dust in the air, I don't experience the same sense of Heimlich, for example, that I feel when I return to my hometown of Wagga Wagga, another New South Wales regional city. As Ishmael Calvino writes, however, you take delight not in the city's 7 or 70 wonders, but in the answer it gives to a question of yours. And I remain nonetheless locally invested in more intrinsically subjective questions about the relationship between who I am and where I am, questions now necessarily towards Newcastle offline with my fascination with the way others aestheticize it online, focusing on the recent phenomenon of place blogging. So place blogging can be considered a subgenre of blogging, as well as an online connection-making activity that develops a sense of community built around place, whereas Tim Lindgren writes, ordinary writers and readers participate in the transition to what Eric Gordon calls network locality, a condition in which the experience of place is increasingly mediated by network technologies. Lindgren's PhD thesis, Place Blogging, Local Economies of Attention in the Network, argues that because network life creates an information-saturated environment in which place must compete with everything else for an increasingly scarce resource, human attention, place bloggers redefine blogging as a way to more deliberately and regularly engage attention in place. Lindgren is interested in the remediation of antecedent or analog ways of engaging with and writing about place, especially essayistic, diaristic and journalistic traditions born out of both nature writing and urban studies. His thesis focuses on a period between 2003 to 2006 when blogging transitioned from a predominantly way for internet enthusiasts to filter content on the web to the popular short-form journal format made accessible by platforms such as WordPress, which was launched in 2003. While some of the Newcastle blogs I followed clearly fit within these more textual parameters, my attention has lately been drawn to the more recent visually dominated microblogging and social networking platform Tumblr, which was launched in February 2007, and as of March 2nd, 2013, had 96 million blogs. So despite ubiquitous anxieties about the potential for online media to erase real-world global and in-situ experience of place, perhaps most pronounced in late 20th century fears around an endless extension of cyberspace, as Eric Gordon argues, location awareness has become central to all aspects of digital media, from mobile phones to online maps to location-based social networks and games, in a world where virtually everything is located or locatable. While blogging may connect bloggers and their audiences to vast anonymous online networks, it also often ties them to direct physical places as well as friends and peers. As Tim Lindgren writes, residential mobility, environmental changes and technological developments have all conspired to change the ways in which we attempt to put our lives in context. What does it mean to be here now? Who are our neighbours? What local information do we trust? What feels like home? Indeed, it may be that it's the affect of blogging, the feeling, that comes from everyday people collectively sharing local experiences, images and information, which I find seductive, as I'm drawn towards the potential for a more utopian communal city online, one which augments Newcastle's overt reality. So I'm not so much interested in the escapist fantasy, as I am in a deepening sense of the everyday, albeit one filtered through the kind of surface/depth peculiar to social media. Social media's oft-touted potential for users to selectively create a better world or image online is of course often reduced to digital narcissism. More optimistically, however, Web 2.0 can also enable a form of peer-to-peer niche building, often in the face of the more negative doom and gloom of traditional media and politics. Newcastle place blogging provides a local DIY example of how bloggers are paying attention to place online across a range of blogging styles. From the more journalistic, I've often thought Wayne Rowling would make a great community man, and interviews on Siobhan Curran's The Novocastrian Files made Newcastle seem irresistibly hip, through to the more image-based tumblers that provide a visual ethnography of the city, ports and all. This essay will offer a cursory survey of some of the blogs that have, for me, captured a sense of Newcastle's poetics of space in a Bacheladian sense, and re-sensationalised this untidy, smoky city, to use blogger Matthew Endicott's terms. So a good local example of the form of WordPress place blogging of the ilk that Lindgren's thesis was engaged with is Mark McLean's Hamilton North. Mark's here today, so that's exciting. I was hoping to flesh you with some of my subjects. Already England, McLean situates his blog as part of a lineage that includes the 18th century English country parson, an amateur naturalist and ornithologist, Gilbert White, who wrote about the world of bearded orchids and ripening crab apples in and around his parish. This is intentionally ironic, however, as McLean's observations come from the world inside Clyde Street, Chatham Road, Broadmeadow Road and Styx Creek. In the introduction to his self-published and locally best-selling book, A Year Down the Drain, Walking in Styx Creek, January to which draws on his blog. McLean writes that walking his dog Jambo in Sticks Creek is the one walk he never tired of. Quote, here I got to let Jambo off the lead, and here I got to see a part of the suburb that's rarely visited by anyone who isn't a kid, or at least a kid with a spray can and a water bottle. Writing about the format of the blog, McLean makes an analogy with the rubbish and discarded objects he observes on his walk down the drain. He writes that blog entries are like the tennis balls and drink bottles. They appear, they gather on a page, and then they get flushed away. That said, in a recent post, It's Nobody's Problem, McLean does take issue with the lack of responsibility for the rubbish in Newcastle's waterways. Yet McLean is not so much an eco-blogger as someone who Benjamin might term a botanist of the asphalt, or in this case, the concrete banks of stormwater drains. I've selected a few images from the blog. This one's just titled Ugly Mess. This is obviously Jambo, and careful mention Jambo, and why I sort of picked this one up was because he's with the soft toy Froggy, and then 12 months before, he'd actually also taken a photo of Froggy. And so he'd lasted in the ecosystem for that long, and he actually looks a bit better for wear rather than less for wear. He's been sort of cleaned on his way down to sort of the end of the creek. You can see some of the kind of graffiti that we're all familiar with, the tags around Newcastle, just that sort of the elevation of low to high and lots of the weedy cracks in Newcastle, the beauty that we, probably disparage. The shopping trolley, and obviously just that sort of Bachelarian sense perhaps of home, that everyone has home somewhere and kind of, creates a sense of place under the bridge here. So another Newcastle blog that focuses on profane illuminations of Newcastle, or perhaps illuminating profanity, is Tabitha Timbers Trash, a Tumblr which posts photos of local graffiti, from street art through to street paintings. You might recognise this was near a girls' school I went to. This is sort of like Newcastle Grammar, Kel's done this. One of the first Newcastle Tumblrs that I followed, I Will Never Forgive Myself by Ian Newen, a straight-edge punk with a facial tattoo and the open jaws of a black panther on his head, is unfortunately no longer online. It provided a portal into a beguilingly other and yet compellingly banal Newcastle. Newen often photographed his morning eggs Benedict, coffee chain snacks, and pet rats. There was something about his melancholic self-hatred that fascinated me, along with his penchant for taking phone photos of an abandoned, nocturnal Newcastle as he walked the city during his many bouts of insomnia. Newen hasn't always lived in Newcastle, but the city was the one thing he remained positive about. One day I was startled to see him with his dad. I knew it was his dad's new partner. There is that kind of voyeuristic element to sort of, lurking online, in an upmarket bakery in Lambton. It almost felt like celebrity spotting. I had to stop myself going up to him. And I think part of the satisfaction of reading blogs is not just having intimate windows into other people's lives, but realising the myriad potential to inhabit the same city in such different ways. Let me pull his blog down. I've got many Newcastle shots from him. If I Will Never Forgive Myself was my antithesis, then stumbling across the copper influence usurped my assumptions in the opposite direction. Also defunct, you can say that about bands, so why not blogs? Christopher May's blog offered compelling insights into the aesthetics of Newcastle, including suburbs like Mayfield and Waratah, from a queer perspective where I least expected it. May's leaders captured something of the neon camp, for example, of Waratah Village Shopping Centre, an elevation of low-high culture offset by the tiny cheesecake shop sign, as well as the eerily absent naked male bodies in his photographs of the men's change sheds at both the city and the ocean bars. When I contacted May to see if I could get access to the copper influence for research purposes, he replied that it is completely irretrievable. I have 2006. May began blogging after returning to Newcastle after failing to relocate to Sydney as a way to, quote, revision Newcastle suburbia, to find its diversity, its fauna, its innovation, its intricacy. I wanted to reject my old inherited dream of metropolis. May's querying of suburban Newcastle is a way of rethinking assumptions about the parochial and the cosmopolitan. As May writes, the internet has especially changed the whole landscape. It has given us all an additional sense so that we can communicate and observe spaces differently. So the copper influence was very much about destroying my own bogophobic anti-suburban prejudices. Things other things changing with the ocean bars, but I think that's it. And very relaxed. I'm not sure how this looks blown up, but it is quite almost like Hollywood when you look at it on the screen, and then you realise it says Waratah Village Cheesecake Shop. So there's that kind of camp elevations there. Sorry, that's a secondary here. Every day since January 1st, 2012, Michael Newton has uploaded a photograph to his Tumblr show bag, often with a pithy tagline posted beneath. His photograph of the, now that you mention it, chest-like tower of the hill is captioned, "Look, ex-bishop." While I often think I've stumbled across the definitive photograph of the Newcastle ocean bars on Tumblr, only to see another one and another, I think that, for me, Newton's photograph of a container ship named Fiction in Newcastle Harbour, which he captured "Not as Strange as Truth," will remain seared in my memory. I immediately emailed it around to a number of writers with a byline of my own. "Fiction, your ship has finally come in." Because I privilege non-fiction, I think. So that's Luke. Not sure if you can see the fiction on the side of the boat, but it's amazing. One of the container ships is called Fiction. It's amazing to me. And someone says, how hard is it to go left? I think that was the tab. I can't quite remember. Brett Peter's Newcastle Depth, a recent addition to Newcastle Tumblr, consists of Instagram images which, in the spirit of Frank O'Hara's lunch poems written during the poet's lunch hour in New York in the early 1960s, includes photographs taken during Peter's walks around Newcastle during his lunch hour. Quote, "I do this to try to see a different view of something that other passers-by may foresee as ugly, eroded, or lifeless, and try and bring new colour and life to that object, building, or subject." And this kind of shows you that the hipster end of the spectrum, where in Instagram you can take a sort of photo and apply all sorts of filters to it, so it turns out to look like a really old Polaroid. And some of that sort of industrial aesthetic is definitely in at the moment, kind of is kind of inherent to Newcastle's interiors. So these blogs are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of Newcastle place blogging. And I began to wonder if this phenomenon was also occurring in Sydney, indeed in other cities. After all, if Sydney is still the sleeping giant in my life, perhaps I should be looking at Sydney place blogs to get my fix. A quick trawl came up with a few interesting examples, such as Pool Lady, a Tumblr documenting Claire Pettigrew's mission to swim in every public pool, ocean and inland in Sydney. Vanessa Berry's blogs Biblioburbia, various explorations of Sydney's public libraries, and Mirror Sydney, detailing her excursions around Sydney's suburbs more generally. Lucas Eileen's archive project The Sham, where the author remained entirely within the postcode of his home suburb of Petersham in April and May 2006. Penultimo, a place blog about Ultimo. And finally, Past/Lives, a blog by Michael Wayne which details Sydney's hidden past. Past Lives, this is a quote from the blog, seeks to uncover the secrets, reveal the hidden sides, and tell the forgotten stories of Sydney using the clues that have been left behind through the years. Past Lives chronicles those instances of reconstituted pizza huts, lazily retooled milk bars, and forgotten former points of significance we pass by or even notice but never really stop to look at. Indeed, Past Lives typifies the recent emergence of active Facebook groups such as Lost Sydney, Lost Newcastle, Lost Gay Sydney, and Lost Gay Newcastle, which harness social media's potential to engage with collective memory and nostalgia, drawing from personal archives. I had talked to Nancy, and there was this idea that maybe these spaces are also a bit more communal and friendly, and it's almost like with everyone with their rose-coloured glasses and their nostalgia really starts to, even, we might think of it quite pitchy, like Lost Gay Sydney. It seems to kind of all come together, but I don't know, those of you on Lost Newcastle, there's been a bit of a connection lately where it's run by a woman who obviously kind of has more of an ABC sensibility, and it's all been going well, but someone got on there the other day and started talking about remembering public sex, basically, and does anyone remember having sex at some of the local adult places, and completely caused a massive crisis, basically, in Lost Newcastle, and so she's been blocked, and I think things will go on as usual, but it was an interesting moment to sort of witness, especially in Lost Newcastle somehow. The ease of switching between Newcastle and Sydney online is so much simpler than finding somewhere affordable to stay in Sydney or what if. Rather than becoming an active blogger myself, my displacement in Newcastle has not prompted me to set up a blog of my own. I have instead become a serial viewer voyeur. Looking at the place blogs of others is one way for me to construct a multi-local self and social network, grounded in specific localities, but also extending beyond any static notion of place. I would feel claustrophobic solely defined by or identified with Newcastle, and require the open field of the internet to make it seem like I'm browsing Newcastle from a necessary distance. As Elias Majalis notes, reapproaching the locals through the network is not simply a case of arriving back at where we started after a process of dislocation and relocation. It's not simply reaching our nose around the back of our head. The mediated near that the network delivers is a slightly different ear, familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Digital psychology may term this dissociative imagination, and there's no doubt that social media skirts the fine boundary between solipsistic interjection and collective engagement in a way that I would argue is not so different to the space of creativity, more conventionally. Here I'm reminded again of Christopher May's statement that the internet has given us all an additional sense so that we can communicate and observe spaces differently. Perhaps for me, however, as someone who observes the observers, this is not so much a matter of paying attention to place, but a symptom of the fact that contemporary attention is as much distracted as attracted, that my presence here is also still partly absent. In our technologically mediated times, this can be something as common as talking on a mobile phone or walking down the street. The portal of place blogging provides me with a way of engaging with place with the requisite proximity and distance, a way to maintain at least the illusion of being a transient local.